Okay, so for follow up this time, we only had the one action item, which I'm not sure if you did. I actually deleted it from the notes because I didn't want to put any pressure on you. But you did say you were going to take the PKM quiz. Did you take it? Did you get your score?
No, I didn't even remember I was supposed to take this thing.
Ah, it's okay. That's
Sorry,
okay.
I had no idea I was supposed to take a PKM quiz. Hold on, I was supposed to take a PKM quiz. Remind me what the PKM quiz is. I don't even remember
I
this,
put
Mike.
together a PKM quiz, but as we record this, the old other episode has not been published yet. Podcasting is weird, but I have some work to do on that thing yet, so I kind of don't care that it's that you didn't take it. It's lacking a little bit of polish. I've had a few people take it. They said it's pretty good. That it was helpful in highlighting a couple things, but yeah, still a work in progress.
Well, here's
so.
where I'm at on that, Mike. This was like so fast, like with life right now. I didn't even remember that was a thing. So I'm sorry. Forgive me.
Yeah, no big deal.
Forgive me,
No big
forgive
deal.
me.
Let's just move right past that. I don't have any other follow up though,
I
so
didn't. I didn't either.
okay.
And when I saw that quiz, I was like, oh, maybe he means the MBI thing, right? Like I'm supposed to take the MBI thing, which I did do that one.
Yep.
But I
Me
didn't
too.
remember the PKM quiz.
Okay, cool. Well, let's save the burnout inventory results until the end, I think, because that's going to be based off of the conversation that we have here today. I guess just one other point of follow up then. I built an app. If you want to know more about it, you should join the pro show because I demoed it live for the YouTube audience, and we talked through this thing that I made. So
And
if you want to in
awesome.
on the well, thank you.
Awesome.
I don't think it's that awesome. I think it is very, very particular and is only going to be relevant for a handful of people. This is the most John Syracuse thing I've ever done.
But Mike did a thing, and it's awesome, and he's too humble, and it's cool. So go check it out.
So yeah, we talked about that in the pro show. Otherwise, you can wait till we iron out the bugs, and then I will open it up to the rest of the world. But for now, let's talk about burnout. First impressions when you think about burnout, Cory. What do you think of? Is it something that you thought before we read this book that you were quote unquote suffering from?
So Mike, I am not happy that you picked this book. I knew this book would be relevant to me. I knew this book would be good for me. I knew this book would do the right thing, which mostly it did. I won't say it did 100%, but mostly it did. Because like I'm in a weird season right now, and I'm going to try to not get too like personal or overdo it with details. I'm in a weird season right now because it's like I've thought multiple times in the last like year-ish, it's like, is this burnout? I mean, like, where are we at? I mean, like when you get hired as a faculty member, one of the things they warn you about, they're like, okay, pace yourself, be careful, right? Like burnout's a real thing. You gotta take care of yourself and all this stuff. And like my boss will ask me every so often, I'll be like, how you doing? How you feeling? Like what's going on? And he won't say the word burnout. It's one of those things that's like, if you don't want him to see the color red, don't say the color red. So it's like, he won't like call it out specific. He's like, how's everything? And he'll do it for all the faculty, right? Like, so how you doing? Everything okay? Like, how you feeling? Are you, anything? Do you need anything? Can I help you? Anything? So he's awesome when it comes to that. But like, this is something that I've thought about not once, but multiple times in the last, I don't know, year and a half, whatever it is. So yes, to say that like this book wasn't on the nose would be a complete lie. And I can't tell if I'm happy with you because of it or if I'm unhappy with you because of it. And we'll figure out how this conversation goes.
Yeah. That's fair. So I actually texted Cory in the middle of reading this book and basically said, I'm sorry. Because the author of this book is a former university professor and shares a lot of details. Well, I guess not former because they're still an adjunct professor, but they were a full-time professor. They were living their dream and they were like, this is awful, and quit. And that was not the subtext that I was trying to get across to Cory. This you should quit your job. That's definitely the vibe of the book. And
here's what I'll say though. Like if you're unfamiliar with academic work, right? Like by no means am I going to say it's the hardest work in the world. By no means am I going to tell you that like there aren't very, very positive things about it. But I will tell you that the sentiment this individual portrays throughout the book, and especially in the first part of the book, the sentiment he portrays about academic work is very, very common. Like, this is not him. Like, what I want to stress here is, like, this is not the author who has a unique perspective on academic work. This is, like, very, very true to the academic mentality, kind of, when it comes to just the way you think about your job and the way you think about work. And it's especially true if you're especially true if you're on the tenure track. So the tenure track changes this, which I don't want to get into that right now unless you want me to. But, like, if you're on the tenure track, it amps all of this up. And he was. I'm not on the tenure track, so I don't have that to deal with.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So the long story short is that Jonathan Malesic, the author of The End of Burnout, had a very positive college experience, loved hanging out with his professors, thinking the deep thoughts, having the serious conversations, and was like, I can't think of a better life than to be this person who I looked up to, and did everything to get there. And once he got there, was like, hey, this is kind of awful.
I've got to pause you here because this is where he is a little bit different than most people, is because most college students are like, he refers to it later on in the book, where they're just like, I'm just here like transactionally. Like, I need to know what I need to know. I want to get a degree and I want to get out of here. So his like love for the dialogue, his love for the deep thoughts, that's probably, I'm making up a number, but that's 5% of the book, right? Like, or 5% of the population of students that come through. That is not a lot of students that come through.
So that actually leads to a topic which he doesn't address real directly, I feel, because for me, I definitely feel the frustration which is at the source of burnout, but a lot of times it comes from unrealized expectations. So right at the beginning, you just hit it on the head. He's got a inaccurate view of what life as a professor working with college students is actually like. So the argument could be made, like, you didn't really know what you were doing. It's not the system's fault. You should have maybe researched that a little bit more before you decided to go into that world.
And in his word, he would call this like the ideal, right? Like, his ideal for what the work was is not on point. So yeah, like, yes.
But you're that right. I don't think discredits the ideas that he talks about in the book. So let's get into the specifics here. And there are 2 parts, but I think since there's only 8 chapters, we tackle this chapter by chapter.
Yeah, I agree. That's great.
Okay. So the first official part of the book is the introduction, where he tells his story of how he went from college student to parking lot attendant to college professor, climbing the ladder, getting tenure, doing the thing, and experiencing burnout. He defines burnout at the beginning here as the experience of being pulled between expectation and reality at work. So he does talk about that at the beginning, but also, like, there's the burnout inventory, which we'll talk about, has a couple different components. So we both took it, so we'll share those at the end and maybe some insights from that. I feel like that's kind of sort of a disclaimer at the beginning, but then it gets very much into personal story as opposed to a lot of science. This is a very story-driven book about burnout.
It is a very story-driven book about his story, and then it makes a shift to like culture, and then it comes back to him and his story. But I want to make sure, if I'm giving too much nuance here, Mike, you can shut me up, and I won't be offended on any level.
You can share as much as you want because you are this guy, basically.
Some people might think, right, without quitting my job. Yes, I'm like,
yes,
but yes. Some people might think like, oh, how do you go get a PhD in, I can't remember what it is, religious studies, something like that. Like, he ends up being a professor of religious studies, but like, how do you get a PhD in religious studies and end up working as a parking lot attendant? And let me very clearly tell you how this happens. You come out with your PhD. You've gotten really, really good at being a pseudo expert, kind of an expert, sort of an expert, maybe, in one tiny little thing. Like, imagine the tiniest little thing possible, and that's what you're good at. And then you go in the job market for maybe 4 jobs. Like there's maybe 4 possible holes for you to fill, like on the job market for that entire year. And the way academic cycles work is there won't be new jobs until the very next year, right? Like, I mean, there's no, and it's not even early in the year. It's like late in the year. It's like you do, because a lot of people don't retire early. Like they don't say, hey, I'm going to retire next year. Like they wait until March or April and they're like, hey, I'm not coming back in the fall. So then the school is like, oh, we got to find somebody else. So he gets his PhD. He goes on the job market. He can't land one of the 3 or 4 openings that's out there at, whatever school he wants to, like whatever type of school you want to be at, because that narrows the field even more. And what do? You do anything you can, because all you're trying to do is wait until the next round of jobs open. And like, that's the nature of the game. So it's brutal. That's what I can describe it as, is like trying to find a faculty job is brutal. And then I don't even talk about the interview process, because it's like days long. It's insane how crazy it is. And it has to do with tenure and has to do with all this stuff. But I'll stop there. So I just want to make sure people know that like him taking a year as a parking lot attendant, like you might think it'd be like, wait, what? Like you just wanted to hang out No, he did not want to hang out a year. He was he was buying time to get to the next round of applications and the next round of openings, so he could apply for more jobs. That's really probably what he was doing.
Yeah, and he was in the middle of a long-distance relationship at the time, which was also stressful. And yeah, there's a lot going on. But yeah, thank you for the context there, because I guess it makes sense, but I didn't really realize that, yes, there's a small pool of jobs, but they're only open at a certain time.
Oh, yeah. and all those pools of jobs, like, I mean, there'll be, tens, if not hundreds of applicants, or the job will be so specific that there's only one person in the world that can fill that.
Sure.
It's just a weird market. It's an absolutely weird job market. And then you're also hiring people. If it's a tenure track, you're hiring people for life. So like if they get tenure, which you want them to do, it's really, really hard to fire them. So you don't hire people willy-nilly. You hire them with the idea that they're going to work there for 30, 40, 50 years, because it's really hard to fire somebody who gets tenure. So
Gotcha.
Okay. Sorry, I went too far off the rails there.
No, I mentioned to you, like, I want to create as much space for you to provide context on what he's sharing here, because you have a better lens on this than than I could possibly have, being in that world.
Yeah.
But
and so much of this book is about him, right? Like so much of this book about his personal trip through this story. So
yeah, it's an interesting book. And he has different experiences, and he shares those stories and his research and trying to get to the bottom of the burnout thing. But a lot of the experiences that he has is kind of like, well, that's random.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing I want to mention before we move on, I don't know if you were getting ready to move us to the first chapter, but he does throw 3 caveats out there. And I violate the first caveat the entire time I read this book, like without a doubt. He says, this is not a self-help book for individuals. I will tell you that, yes, he stated that as a caveat. I don't think that was his goal, but like if you fit the mold and you are like him or in a position that's like him, it is very, very hard for you to not read this book like a self-help book. And like
that's a bit of a cop-out, I feel.
Yeah. Like, so I get why he says it. We'll talk about it later. Like I get why he says he's got some bigger, grander goals that he's trying to accomplish with the book. But that first caveat is not a self-help book for individuals. The second one is the core of the argument is not that burnout is a direct result of capitalism or late capitalism. So you do get a vibe here in this book that he is anti-capitalist, and you do get a vibe that he is Marxist, and you do get a vibe like from some of these other things. And I don't want to go into the politics of that. I don't want to go into my personal opinion on any of that stuff. What I do want to say is I can understand. It's almost as if he wrote the book and then said, people are going to think, and then I'm going to go write these caveats, right? Like people are going to think this is a self-help book. I'm going to write the caveat. People are going to think this is a book about me not liking capitalism. I'm going to go right, Then the last one is the book is mainly about burnout and paid employment, and I think that's the most relevant of his caveats, because all he talks about here is paid employment. He doesn't talk about burning out in a volunteer role. He doesn't talk about burning out, like for instance, you and I volunteering at church or doing all of these other things that we do that we aren't paid for. Like there's burnout there too, but that's a different class of burnout, I think.
Yeah, I feel like the whole thing about it not being a self-help book for individuals, for an entire society, that makes it really weird. I mean, if you want to change a society, you got to start by changing one person. As you were describing that, the picture I get is the academic version of Martin Luther's theses, except there's not a single door he should go nail that on some university somewhere.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yep. Oh, man.
All right. So yeah, there's two sections. Let's get into the chapters. The first section is burnout culture. The second section is counterculture. So the first part, burnout culture, has 5 chapters in it. The second part has 3 chapters. So the first part is really about where we are, and then the second part maybe is what we can do about it. Kinda.
Yeah.
Kinda. Yeah. All right. So let's go to chapter 1. Chapter 1 is everybody is burned out, but no one knows what that means. I thought this was actually pretty profound. He talks a lot in here about the origins of burnout and how it's gone up considerably in the last 50 years, but nobody has a single definition that they can really use for this.
Yep.
The source that he uses for a lot of the stuff about burnout is the research done by Christina Malesic, the author of the Malesic Burnout Inventory, which we both took and we'll talk about later. And there's a book that she wrote called Burnout, the Cost of Caring, where she talks about those who burn out tend to be idealistic. If you lack close relationships with friends and family, you're more likely to be dependent on colleagues or coworkers for signs of appreciation. And when the workplace does not recognize the human side of work, then the risk of burnout grows, carrying a high price with it. Individuals aren't to blame for burnout, he says at the beginning here, which is probably connected to his argument that this is a societal thing and not an individual thing. And then talks about how there are 3 different dimensions to burnout. I'd love to get your take on these. Exhaustion, cynicism or depersonalization, and a sense of ineffectiveness or diminished accomplishment.
All right, so the one that doesn't connect with me as much, the exhaustion makes total sense, right? Like is just a way that like if you're experiencing some sort of burnout symptom, you're just tired. Like you just feel tired and you wake up and you're like, oh man, do I really have to go do this again today? Like, am I really going to go do this? And this is not a personal thing. Like, I'm not saying that I experience this all the time, but it's like, I get that. Like that actually makes sense. That seems pretty natural. Like if I'm experiencing burnout, this just feeling of tiredness. Now, later on in the book, and I don't remember exactly where, he's going to relate this to depression and he's going to relate this to other things like melancholy and all this stuff. And I think he does a really good job as he relates this. So I'll pause on that for now. But is it exhaustion? Is it depression? Is it just a general like sadness or apathy or whatever it might be? That's a great one. Like I like that category. The next one is the diminished accomplishment or this idea of personal accomplishment. I don't know how much I connect with this one. Like I can kind of see where it comes from, but this one was like newer to me or is kind of a surprise to me. The depersonalization was the one that shocked me the most. It's like, oh, do I start to like think of the job less about the people in the job or less about my colleagues or less about the people I'm serving or less about like all these other things? And it's more of like the work and it's more of the nuts and bolts of what I'm doing. Like I'm pushing this paper, not I'm helping a student get to graduation. You know what I mean? Like it's a big difference between the way I think about those two things. So I don't mind these 3. I would have to think hard about whether I think these 3 are the 3. If Malesic did the research the way like I would think about doing the research, is she's going to go ask a bunch of people about like, how do you experience burnout? And they're going to give her answers. And she's going to be like, I feel this way. I feel this way. I think this. I feel this. I think this. And then she's going to aggregate those back into the most essential characteristics that she can. Like that's the way I would do this research is I would go out and ask a bunch of people about burnout and just ask them and say, tell me whatever you want to tell me about burnout. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to figure out how to get those into categories. And I can see these 3 categories coming out as 3 relevant categories in this world.
Nice. Yeah. I think the research done by Christina Malesic, I want to dig into that more. The burnout, the cost of caring, that might be one that I'll have to pick up at some point. What do you think about this statement that if almost everyone suffers from burnout, then no one does? That kind of goes against his argument that this is a societal thing, not an individual thing, right?
So I don't connect with this statement as much. Like, if everyone suffers from burnout, no one does. Like it just becomes the water you swim in. Like I understand that. That argument is like, oh, if everybody's burned out, then really this is just normal. This is what we call normal, and there is no like person who's actually burned out. Like I kind of get that. Where I like later on in the book, and I had it, and it is evading me right now. But like, I'll see if I can think about it, come back to it. But it has to do with this idea that like burnout is the norm now, and like
Yep.
everybody's experiencing it and everybody's feeling it, and like that I think that is a cultural thing. Like I think that is something that we do it. Oh, it's the sense of like the sense of honor that comes with it. Like, hey,
Oh, sure.
I'm burned out. Look how hard I'm working. Like I'm burned out. Like, oh man, I'm going after it. I'm hustling more than you are, right? Which I know you're feeling about hustle, right? Like so, like I think there's a very big truth to that. So I get I get where he's coming from here. I don't know if I love it or hate it.
Yeah, so the point that he makes right before that is that different studies have different definitions of burnout. And the message that I got was basically people keep watering down the definition. And so if we do that so that all these people suffer from burnout, then no one is really burnt out. We don't really understand at all what this means. And there is a little bit of truth to that because the different studies have different definitions of that. And he shares some of the statistics. Like one study says it's this much, one study says it's that much. But if it's this much of millennials and this much of the total workforce, that's impossible.
Well, and
There's a
then
discrepancy there.
at some point he talks about the fact that for different genders burnout looks differently, and then for different races burnout looks different, but the data doesn't back that up. Like that's like kind of the anecdote that's said about it. So I think the drive home when I think about burnout in general is there's some stuff we know, but there's still a lot of stuff we don't know. Like it's this fuzzy concept. It's not, this hard concept. He compares it to strep throat, right? Like if you get strep throat, there's a test and it's like you have strep throat. We know it. It failed this test or it passed this test or whatever it is. And for this, it's like not that clean. It's maybe you kind of do, you kind of don't. Which I know I'm merging a bunch of chapters together, but it's this idea of that spectrum, which is chapter 3. But we'll get there. We're not there yet.
Yeah. All right. So let's go to chapter 2 then, unless you got something else in chapter 1.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay. So chapter 2 is Burnout, the first 2,000 years. And yeah, I kind of even don't know how to frame this one. He gets into some of the burnout before burnout definitions, like neurasthenia. Probably butchering that term, but that was kind of the precursor to burnout. And I felt like as he was going through these different definitions of these terms, just like burnout, they didn't really have solid definitions. So I think it's fine just to say that that's kind of a precursor to burnout. And then he also says that eventually it disappeared because the definition of what that was got stretched too far.
Mm-hmm.
And the major point, though, I think, is that over the last 50 years, the topic of burnout has really become more popular. And awareness of burnout has grown significantly in those 5 decades, but understanding of it has not. So his point that he's making in this chapter is that we've essentially been having the same conversation about burnout for the last 50 years, and we're not getting anywhere. Is that fair?
Yeah, yeah, and just to add a little color to it, right? So he talks about ancient melancholia, acedia, modern melancholia, right? And then the word that you said that I can never remember, neuro something or other, right?
Yeah, I'm not gonna try that again.
Yeah, like I think he's trying to get at this idea of like we don't have a definition of it. We're trying to make a definition of it. I'm trying to make a definition of it, but nobody's going to accept my definition of it because we've been dealing with this for 2,000 years. And he's just trying to lay the land, I think, of if you can't find this is what burnout is, there's a good reason why you can't find this is what burnout is. And here are all the ways we've talked about it in the past. So like he talks about Freudenberger And it's precisely because we are dedicated to what we do that we burnout trap. We work too long and too intensely. So he gets this idea of like working too long, working too intensely. He gets this idea of the internal pressure to meet some ideal with not achieving that in the reality, or not achieving that in the workplace. And like, I don't remember, Mike, so I'm going to ask you to see if you remember, if you wrote it down in your notes. Does he ever actually like straight up define it? I'm trying to think if he does it in the very beginning.
All right. You mean burnout specifically?
Yeah, he does. Okay.
Yeah, the experience of being pulled between expectation and reality at work. And that actually leads to the stilts analogy that he shares in the next chapter.
Yeah. So, but it's like, even there, when he says like the difference between the expectation and the reality at work, I like that for me doesn't fully jive with, this whole chapter 2 discussion, right? About all this melancholia and all this stuff. Yeah. So like, I don't know. Like I'm kind of torn on this. And hopefully I'm not sounding like I'm negative about the whole discussion he's having in these first 2 chapters, because for somebody who is thinking about this or who has thought about this, this is a really good, informative 2 chapters, right? Like I'm learning a lot and I'm engaging a lot with what he's writing here. Also like a pretty bow put around things. That way I can walk away and say like, hey, here's the pretty bow that was put around this in the first 2 chapters. And I didn't get a pretty bow.
So let me ask you about that, because I know he's writing this for the society at large, not for individuals, which I don't understand that approach, but he said that. So we'll give him that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you're coming to this and you are dealing with burnout, you're probably like, yeah, I don't care. Just make the pain go away, right? The people who really need to understand the causes for this are the people who are not dealing with burnout. And so you're just relying on them to do everybody else who is a solid.
Okay. So this squares the circle well. He wrote it that it's not an individualistic book. So he's not writing for you, the individual who's coming for help with burnout. He's writing for the political leader, the manager at the company, like he's writing for those people who care about helping this culturally or care about changing this in their workplace. So in my mind, that all checks out. Like everything seems to work out well in that situation. If he was writing it for the individual who wants help, right, then the whole background section is okay, but you could shorten it down to 10 pages. Right? Give me the 10-page cliff notes of it.
Yeah, so this is the thing I don't understand, though, is maybe it's different in academia. Maybe you really need to have all this research basis. But again, it's not like a very pretty bow and like, this is why we got to do this. It's really just...
You nailed it, right? And I didn't think about it. Like, he's an academic. He's a tenure-track academic. He writes. He loves writing. It's his lit review. Like the first two, first 1, 2, 3, 4 chapters are like his lit review. I didn't even think about it. Mike, good job.
Well, I mean, I worked at companies and the digital marketing agency specifically. I feel like that's the one where you really can burn people out just based on the pace of the work that's being done.
Yeah.
And I wasn't the HR person, but I worked with the HR person on the leadership team, and the HR person would absolutely love to help the people at the company overcome burnout. If I gave the HR person this book, they don't make it through the first 2 chapters because they're like, I'm not even sure this is a thing, and I don't understand what we're even trying to solve here. Cool story, bro.
Yeah.
About your experience, but like, what do I do with this?
Valid. That's a valid point. I can't say much to that. That's a valid point.
Okay, well, let's go to chapter 3, because this one, I think, this whole idea of the spectrum is really good. So chapter 3 is the burnout spectrum. And the analogy that I alluded to is that you've got these stilts and you're walking on them and they keep getting further and further away. The further you go down this path, the higher up on the stilts you go, so you can get even more stretched out and the crash is even greater. Mentions that you can experience burnout without being burned out. and the gap between our ideals for work and the reality of our job is burnout's origin point. Then they get into the definitions that pertain to those three components of burnout. And I think this is interesting. So the first one is that we're engaged with our work. And if we were taking that Malesic burnout inventory, maybe this is the place to talk about that. I don't know. It keeps coming up. But there's the three different scales, basically: exhaustion, cynicism, and then the sense of ineffectiveness or diminished accomplishment. Okay, so if you score the high, let's say, well, that's kind of inverse. So like if you're high exhaustion, that's bad. Okay, so you score in the good range for exhaustion, cynicism, and then that sense of ineffectiveness. Okay, then you are engaged. If you score high on that first one, you are exhausted basically, but not the other two. You're overextended. If you're high on cynicism, then you are, surprise, cynical. If you are high on the sense of ineffectiveness or diminished accomplishment, you are frustrated. And that's assuming that there are no other scales that are very high. But if you have more than one of them, you are burned out. Okay, so the percentages here for like where people fall into these buckets is, I think 40 to 45% were engaged. 15% roughly were overextended, 10% were cynical, 20 to 25% were frustrated, and then 5 to 10% were burned out. So there's a couple of ranges there, which means it doesn't quite add up to exactly 100%. But I think that gives some context now for burnout, and I like this positioning. Again, though, there's like anecdotes here, which is kind of like, well, what do we do with this? So he says burnout may be a form of depression because this one study showed that 86% of school teachers who were burned out also met criteria for depression. So, okay, that seems like there's a strong correlation there, but it's one specific cherry-picked example. And yeah, I wish there would have been a little bit more. This is the conclusion from the hypothesis based on all the research that we looked at. And maybe that just doesn't exist, but I kind of think Christina Malesic has some of that stuff.
I would be shocked if she doesn't, like if she doesn't have more of that locked in, but I don't know. I mean, you're right. Like all of the things you're saying make total sense. Is like, that being said, I think his main point here is that it's on a spectrum. It sits at face value. Like that actually works, right? Like, there is the idea of burned out or not burned out. Where do I reach that? Where do I achieve that? When am I burned out? When am I not burned out? And really, it's like, are we all just on this scale of burnout? And it's funny that somebody in the chat brought up nihilism, right? Like a book on nihilism. And the funny thing is, because I feel like as I'm reading this, right, he's moving more towards a nihilistic view. Like, listen, we're all screwed. We're all going to suffer on the spectrum of burnout. It's really just where you are on that spectrum. And, there's no getting out of it. There's no overcoming it, anything like that. So here we go. And then I'm going to move into part 2. And he's got 200 years of data. He would say in the last 50 years, and then he ends the last chapter with, actually, it's in the last 200 years if you consider these other things. So it's like he's building this argument of basically like, there's no getting away from this. So, and then he's going to drop the bomb in the next one. But like, I don't have that worldview. Like, that's just not my take on it. Is we're not all in this soup of, burnout, where there's no way to get out of it. It's just a matter of, are some of us experience it? Yeah. Like, so it's like, I'm very torn on aspects of this book to where like, I agree with his overall premise of certain things. And then I completely disagree with some of the other premises that he's got, or the worldview that he's got. So it's a very weird read for me, Mike, like a very weird read for me.
Well, speaking of disagreements, let's go to the next chapter. Let's wrap up this section, I think, then talk about our results before we go to part 2.
Okay. All right.
All right, so the next chapter, how jobs have gotten worse in the age of burnout. There are a couple things specifically that he mentions here. I'll start with the good stuff, I think. The 6 areas where workers tend to experience mismatches between people and their jobs: workload, control, reward, community, fairness, and values. I think that's probably accurate. I think you could condense this, though.
Okay.
I came across a statistic somewhere at some point several years ago which was basically people want three things at their job.
Okay.
Number one was autonomy. And so I feel like the workload and control kind of can be combined into that, if that makes sense. I forget what the other two were, but those are probably accurate, but I think it could be simplified basically.
It's funny that you say that, because the one that, when you were saying this, I came across the thing, I was like, autonomy is the first one. Like, I guarantee like autonomy is one of them. And okay, I was glad I was right.
Yeah, I wish I could find that now, but anyways. So conditions in the workplace contribute greatly to whether a worker will burn out, and for 3 decades, jobs have gotten worse. There's an interesting point here about the emphasis on right sizing, which has led to less people doing more.
Mm-hmm.
As a former integrator who had to go through right sizing, I get the larger societal point, but I can tell you that in the individual scenario, like, this absolutely needed to be done. Everybody was going to lose their jobs if some people did not. And it was just because, I don't know, I get into specifics, but what happens in these scenarios is like, oh, this person's been here forever. They're not really good at their job, but they're really trying really hard. Let's create a position for them. Great. If you have unlimited resources, and this is at the heart of like the capitalism argument, but that's where we live currently in the United States. So we kind of have to play by the rules that exist here to a certain level. I mean, if you don't have to worry about that, awesome. Go change the world. And I'm not saying don't try to not change the world because you have to have a family to feed. There's a line here. But anyways, like, I think there's exceptions to this. I came across a website the other day that had like, for you're a creative entrepreneur like I am, and I'm not at the point where I can really hire somebody full-time for this, but if you wanted a full-time executive assistant, a video editor, whatever, what they do is they find people in countries that are going through economic turmoil, like Venezuela, and for a long time people have worked with people from the Philippines, and some of those are just like, we're trying to get labor as cheap as we possibly can, and I don't like that. But I have personal stories associated with specific people in those countries where they were thrilled to get that opportunity because it's better than anything else that they could have gotten.
Yes.
And if you can do it right, you know, you can care about the people that you work with, you can pay them to do this job that you're quote unquote outsourcing, you know, without having the, you know, the diminished human dignity, which is really his larger point. My issue with this chapter, though, is there's a couple of examples that he shares, which I think are not great. Mentions Toyota and Kaizen as a means of wearing out people's minds as wearing out people's minds. My note is that I think the mention of Toyota and Kaizen as a means of wearing out people's minds is a bit of a stretch.
The argument he doesn't present is the other side of this coin, though. Sorry, make your point. I interrupted you. I feel bad.
Well, so like just Kaizen in general is small improvements. And the people who actually can make the call on what should be improved are the people who are doing the work. So you can view this as like, oh, you're asking them to do more and you're wearing them out. But actually, if you do it right, these people feel empowered because they can make their job better. They notice that this thing is causing friction and this is the simple solution to fix it. Let me just fix it quick because I'm the one who has to deal with this 8 hours a day, every day.
Okay. So study of work, we look at the history of work, right? I teach a class called Work Methods where we actually study how humans do jobs. And the history prior to this was the foreman told you what to do and you did what the foreman told you to do. And the foreman told you how to do it and you did it the way the foreman told you to do it. And if you didn't, you got in trouble. And if you continued to not listen to the foreman, you got fired, right? Like, so like the history of work or labor-based work up until then was very much like, do what I say because I'm smarter than you and this is the right way to do it. And you had no voice. Like, you had no ability to come in and say, well, what if we just tweaked this aspect? We would do this faster and I wouldn't be as tired at the end of the day. You know, like, and in my mind, Kaizen did some of that, right? Like, it said like, hey, if you have ideas on how to improve this system to make everybody better, we'd love to hear those ideas. And then we're going to actually listen to those ideas. Now, does it engage the does it engage the brain of the person in a different way? Yes. So instead of me pulling the handle that goes stamp, 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 I go, I wonder if there's a different way that I could do stamp, 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 right? So yes, does it do that? But this is where you have to go back up to Malesic's main argument or his overall worldview, and you have to look at this, and he's automatically looking at this as there's a problem between management and labor. This fission has been created to where all we're trying to do is get more effort out of the laborer to make higher profits, right? Like, so we're treating them like a machine. We're treating them like a machine. And while I can't say any of that is 100% wrong, what I can say is, like, if you go too far in either of these directions, what's the thing? Like, you can oversell your argument, if that makes sense, or you can go too far. And this is what I'm worried, or this is what I think he does. Like, I think he goes too far in this. Is yes, are you then engaging their brain in a way that you weren't engaging their brain before, that's making them more cognitively tired and or likely to burn out? Maybe. But are you also empowering them, which I'm so glad I stopped and let you say the word, because I wanted to say that too. You're also empowering them to actually improve the system, and that's a positive thing in their life. So
that's the autonomy that we were talking about.
but then, like, I think that can go too far as well, right? Like, so now they go, well, hold on, I'm adding all these improvements and I'm not getting any other benefit from this. Like, yes, I feel more empowered, I feel more autonomous, but like, I'm still, pulling the handle 1,000 times a day. So come on, like, something's got to give here. And I think that's the challenge of it, is what's the balance? How much autonomy do we give versus having them still do the job they got hired to do? And that's a struggle.
Okay, so I have one other bone to pick with this chapter, but I have to ask you first, Cory, since you're in this world. Would you say that in academia, emotional intelligence skills are overall high or overall low?
Okay, so say it again.
In the academic world that you live in, the professors that you work with, the staff at the colleges and universities, would you say that emotional intelligence skills on average are high or on average are low?
That's a really interesting question. If you mean my current location, Colorado Christian University, I think our emotional intelligence skills are higher than other places in academia.
Okay, above the mean.
I think we are above the mean because of the Christian nature of our institution and the Christian worldview that we have. I think if you look more broadly at state schools and you look more broadly across the spectrum, they're at the mean, and or certain places they're below. I think if you look in the engineering disciplines, they are below. So, like, take that for what it's worth. But like, that's my gut reaction to your question.
Okay. So I think it's pretty clear throughout this book that he also has, religious studies major, and the experiences that he shares, he's also coming at it from a Christian perspective. But I can see all sorts of signs here about the place that he was in not being a place where emotional intelligence skills were prioritized. One of the statements that he makes here is that, talking about the people who are able to escape exhaustion, he says, or they have the rare quality of resiliency. Okay, so background. My dad, family business, emotional intelligence, right? They built this emotional intelligence assessment. It's been used 10 million times, places like Apple, Boeing, Michelin Tire, all over the place. Colleges, high schools. It was actually developed in conjunction with Texas A&M University. 140 doctoral level papers and books written on the effectiveness of this assessment, right? One of the scales in that assessment is resiliency. So this is what people nowadays would call grit. Also, an emotional intelligence skill in that assessment is empathy, which I think he could very much point to. Oh yeah, there was definitely a lack of empathy in the environment that I was in. I'm projecting here, but I think the author would agree with that. So to me, this is okay. And then the other thing, I guess, with emotional intelligence is that this isn't a rare skill. Okay, it maybe is less common Kind of the basis of my question is maybe it's even more less common in this particular world. I don't know that for sure. But resiliency is not it's not rare, like he says. And you can develop this. This is not something that you are born with. Okay, you don't either have this or you don't. You have the ability to develop that skill, just like all the other emotional intelligence skills. So I kind of think there's a link here maybe between emotional intelligence and burnout, which I don't think we can really explore that here because there's not enough to go on.
Mm-hmm.
But the sign I'm getting from this chapter is sort of like old man yells at cloud without really understanding the whole picture. And that kind of bugs me.
Would it be safe to say that and again, I don't want to put words in his mouth. We're just trying to think about the way he's constructed these arguments. Would it be safe to say that he would put a high EQ work environment as an ideal environment? And the reality of it is it's not that. Like it's not a high EQ environment. So therefore, it goes back to his main argument of this this separation between his ideal work environment and his reality work environment. Like, would that be safe to say?
Maybe. I guess the tell I get here is that, and this is not uncommon, and this is not just to this author. This is totally just my perspective being brought to this book. I think there's enough evidence in this chapter to point to the fact that he doesn't really understand emotional intelligence as a topic and its role in burnout. And I feel like that if you developed your own emotional intelligence skills, that your job would get better magically, and you wouldn't really be able to connect why, but it totally would.
Got it.
Anyways, exit soapbox, chapter 5.
Hold on, can I make one more statement about chapter 4?
Sure.
He uses an expletive that I won't, but he talks about like jobs that are busy.
Oh
work,
yeah,
like busy work jobs. They're a charade. They look like work, but they accomplish little of social value. And performing, those people performing the labor often realize it. I can tell you that, like, for me personally, this is a Cory statement. Nothing demotivates me more. And I'm trying to think about it. Emotional exhaustion or exhaustion, cynicism, and then personal achievement. Nothing makes me lower on personal achievement and more cynical than if you give me a bunch of stuff that, like, everybody knows this doesn't matter. Like, we are collecting this metric because somebody decided they wanted this metric, and it really isn't going to be used. Like, nobody really cares. Nothing is more demotivating to me in work than that. It's unbelievable. So I think that statement was golden. Like, I think that's a really, really good statement.
Yeah, I agree with that. But also, I don't think you're not stuck in a system where you just have to do that all the time. Maybe he was specifically at his college or university. And I can think of jobs where I've been in where, I've experienced that. But you know what? You can quit that job. You can find a better job. You can find a better situation.
This might be a nuanced thing too, because Mike, in academia, we have to do these things called portfolios. And especially if you're on the tenure track, you have to submit a portfolio and then it gets reviewed. But like, I even have to submit a portfolio. And essentially what a portfolio is it's a multi-100-page document. It used to be in paper, and you put it in a binder, and then we've gotten to more digital forms of it now. But it's a multi-100-page document of essentially you justifying why they should keep you on the faculty. Like, that's really what it is. And like, you have these buckets that you have to like fill in, and you have to like now I'm not, how do I say this? This is the way academia is. So my institution is not any different than any other institution. And what I'll tell you is it's worse in the tenure track. It's worse in these tenure track jobs. But then the other thing, Mike, is it'd be like, oh, okay, well, what's my benchmark that justifies like that you should keep me? And the problem is there is no benchmark. Like, there are these things that we should be doing, right? We have these job descriptions in these different areas of our work. So typically they're teaching, research, and service. And there are these three categories, and the different institutions will weigh them differently, right? So like I'm at a teaching focused institution. So teaching ranks higher in my priority scheme than it would go teaching, service, and then research. Like that's how mine would go. And they even generalize ours a little bit more to scholarship, right? Because research looks different in the music department than it does in the engineering department that it does in bio, right? Like, so they open that up. But like, what's the bar? There's no bar. Like nobody knows a bar. Like it's, well, we're going to put your portfolio in a room and it's going to stack up against these other portfolios. And then there's going to be people who they've achieved the level that you want to, and they're going to review it and they're going to say whether you've done a good enough job. And what I'll tell you is, it's really, really, really easy to get really, really, really cynical when that's the process. Like it's super easy to get really cynical when that's the process.
Yeah, that's fair. I haven't experienced that in academia, so I don't have any sort of reference point, but I sort of get it. I do think that there is a scenario where he doesn't end up drawing the same conclusions that he drew and doesn't have the same experiences that he had, doesn't get burnt out like he did. But, you can't argue with the lived experience. So
Yep.
It's good to just understand that as the backdrop. Let's go to chapter 5,
Okay.
which is Work, Saints, and Martyrs. The problem with our ideals. Let's
Can
see.
I
So
start
the
this one?
ideal, yeah, go for it.
Okay. I love this chapter. And I think the reason, like, so here's what I love about this chapter is he talks about the Benedictines in this chapter. And oh, hold on. Is that chapter 7? Am I way too early?
I think it might be chapter 7, where he
Okay.
gets specific into that. But I think he maybe mentions it
Yeah, let
here.
me start that. Let me start chapter 7 then, because
Okay.
I love the Benedictines chapter.
Yeah. So the ideal that he mentions here is if you work hard, you will live a good life. And he mentions that this promise is mostly false. I mean, that sounds very cynical.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe it's true, or maybe maybe that his statement, most of that is false is true, but I don't really know. Mentions that work makes a couple of promises, which I think this is good stuff. Work promises to build character, and work promises us a pathway to purpose. So the larger point that he makes with this whole book is that we shouldn't look to work for our purpose. We should maybe bring our purpose with us when we do our work. And I think that's probably a good approach. Let's see. So engagement and flow he talks about here. The idea of flow is universal. You don't have to be a surgeon in order to experience that. Flow is from Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the researcher, about how when you try to do things that are just outside your ability level, like that's where you engage the flow. Things that are difficult require your full attention. That also leads to being the most fulfilled. And I don't know. The other thing I jotted down from here, which I thought was relevant to me, is that when you are overworked, the thing that decreases is your ability to be creative. It's not the ability to do the math. So you can be burned out and still crunch the numbers. You can't be burned out and actually make stuff, which I've experienced that. I know what that feels like.
Yep. I think this chapter, so I did get mixed up on chapter 7 versus this chapter. This chapter I felt like it was all over the place for me. But like it's important that I come in with my background on the idea of work. He talks about work, saints, and martyrs. I believe work is something that we are supposed to do. Like now, I don't know if I am required to say that paid work is something we are supposed to do, or work in the current form is what work is supposed to look like. But I think like doing something, but then the key to my understanding of work is working that enhances human flourishing. That's the way I'm going to describe it for our show. Work that enhances human flourishing is essential to what we are supposed to do on this earth as humans. Okay. So I look at that and I say, like, now, what are all the ways that work that enhances human flourishing has potentially been co-opted or has been taken and made negative or all this stuff? And I don't know if it's my optimism in life or whatever it is, but I feel like we just go down this like spiral of, well, this negative and this negative and this negative and this negative. And it's like, I don't know. It didn't resonate with me. Like I'm not saying the things that he said weren't like accurate. I'm just saying like it just felt like a very unnecessary or like, soapbox is the only word I can think of, right? Like very soapboxy way to put this. And I'll give you an example of like something I agreed with. The top reason college students give for pursuing a degree is to be able to get a better job. Hands down, 100%. That is true. Like there are very few students who come here and they say, I want to better myself in the next 3 to 4 years. They really go like, I just want to graduate and get a good job. Or, right, I want to, like meet a group of people that I connect with or something like that. Like they don't come here to say like, I'm passionate about the learning. But what do I go into work every day thinking? Learning, value, making you better, all those things. So it's like, there's a discrepancy there. Like I agree with there's a discrepancy there. But like, I don't go into this like thinking that, my colleagues should be let go without any warning, right? And he talks about the neoliberal era, like the college can just go, management can just let you go without warning. And I also don't think CCU does that. Like, I don't think our culture is that. Like, there's no willy-nilly, like, look at that person. We can just get rid of them at the same time. So I'm very torn on this chapter. The idea of flow, honestly, like feels like it comes out of nowhere. Like I don't understand why flow is even in this book. I get it maybe to like burnout is the opposite of flow. So like there, but I think that's a really loose connection. So anyhow, like I just felt very conflicted with this chapter.
Yeah, I think this chapter is the weakest one in the first section. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's there just for the title to be a lead into chapter 7, like you were talking about. So want to talk about our results here?
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about our results.
Okay. So we both took the Malesic Burnout Inventory. I took mine through was it Mind Garden?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You took the same one?
No, but I saw that one.
Okay.
That's her official one, though. Like the Mind Garden one is Maslak's official one.
Okay. So the one that I took has it gives you a profile based off of the categories that they mentioned earlier. Did the one that you took did it give you a profile?
I've made my own profile. Like I analyzed this and made my own profile. So yes, but it's not the profile that you have. No.
Okay. So what was your profile though?
Okay.
And so because my profile matches one of those 5 that we talked about earlier.
Okay. So I'm high on the EE score. I'm moderate on, EE would be exhaustion score. I'm moderate on the depersonalization, and then I'm low on the accomplishment, the personal accomplishment score.
Professional. So mine are exhaustion, cynicism, and professional efficacy is how she describes it.
Okay. So what I will tell you though is one of the things when I was looking at the different surveys, right? Like I found one that lists all of her surveys out because that's really what I wanted to see is like, I want to see how are they different? Like how is the general survey different from the medical person survey, from the educator survey and all these things? And what I'll tell you is I would have scored differently. I don't know if my, the buckets I fell into, which were like high degree, moderate, and then low degree, like if they would have changed. But like if you'd have given me the general survey where it didn't frame it in terms of students and education and it framed it in terms of work and colleagues, I'd have gotten a different score. I can tell you right now, I'd have gotten a different score.
Okay. So did you get a profile though? Like which of those 5 buckets do you fall into then?
I don't remember the 5 buckets. So what were they?
So engaged is none of them are high. Overextended is exhaustion's high. Cynical is the cynicism's high. Frustrated is the efficacy, I think, is low. And then burned out is more than one of them are.
Oh, so I'm burned out.
Yep.
Yeah,
Me too.
because I'm low. I'm low on two of them. Like I'm in the higher low bucket. I'm in the red on two of them, and I'm in the yellow on one of them.
Okay, so here's what mine says. It says your burnout profile is characterized by high frequency scores on exhaustion and cynicism. And then professional efficacy scores may vary, and even a high professional efficacy score can be outweighed by exhaustion and cynicism, resulting in burnout. So if you have high efficacy, basically you can battle burnout for a while. You've got a why, you've got a reason. So my scores, kind of the numbers don't really matter, but the percentiles are interesting. For exhaustion, I am in the 98th percentile. Cynicism, 93.
Wow.
I would not have guessed that. Now, this is interesting.
At all.
So that's the interesting part, is the percentiles are very different than the scores. So my score, the assessment I took, you answer, never, a few times a year or less, once a month or less, a few times a month, once a week, a few times a week, or every day. So my score for exhaustion was 5.4, and my score for cynicism was 3.8. That's kind of in the middle almost, but it's still a high percentile score. And the professional efficacy was a 5, so that one's actually pretty high as well. But the percentile score for efficacy actually was 70th percentile. So I'm able to battle it pretty well, but there's definitely signs of burnout here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, what can you do about it? That's what the rest of the report is about. I haven't decided exactly what I am going to do about this yet, but obviously something needs to change. And I've actually taken this before, and to my recollection, I couldn't find my old results, but I do recall the first time I took this assessment, I was trending towards burnout. It was kind of like, hey, you should be careful. Well, now I'm there.
And how did you hear about this before?
Chris Bailey.
Okay.
He mentioned it to me, I think, when he was doing research for his last book, Intentional.
Yeah. Okay. So
maybe he mentions it there, but I can't recall.
So I'll unpack mine a little bit more. So I'm a high degree of exhaustion, right? And I can tell you that that checks out. Like if I'm thinking about it from a there are more days than not that I wake up and I'm like, I'm tired. Like I'm just tired, and I can't really peg it to any one thing. It's just like, man, I'm just kind of tired, right? And then the other way that I'll say, like, I know exhaustion is, what's the first thing I think about doing when I wake up? And the first thing I think about doing when I wake up is some sort of movement. Like it's not like prep a lesson. It's not grade a paper. It's not like do any of that. I want to move physically, because I think that tiredness I'm trying to overcome with like endorphins, so I think that's the nature of it. The depersonalization, that I'm moderate there. And the reason why that checks out for me is because I'm in a people-focused organization. Like the better my relationships are with my colleagues, the better the whole organization runs. The better my relationships are with my students, the better the educational process is, right? Like if you want to shut down the educational process, depersonalize your students, and or just not have, like you would say, like emotional intelligence, or not like, just be kind of mean, like, and it shuts down the learning process right now. Like, and I don't mean mean is the only emotional, you know what I mean? Then the one with personal accomplishment, right? Like that's my surprising one. Like, so when you said your results, the cynical one, like, I don't think of you as a cynical person at all. So like the cynical one was surprising to me. For mine is like the personal accomplishment, that it's low, right? And the way it works, that personal accomplishment assessment is a feeling that acts as a safety valve and contributes to bringing about a balance if occupational exhaustion and depersonalization occur. It ensures fulfillment in the workplace and positive view of professional achievements, right? And I was like, well, I have a positive view of my professional achievements. Like, I think I'm doing a pretty good job and like everything, but like obviously something's off there. So like if I'm gonna look at this, it's like, okay, why is that off? Like there's something about the achievements I have at work that aren't resonating. I don't even want to say correctly, but they're resonating in a weird way, and I don't know what that means. So that's the one that is surprising to me.
Well, we're both burned out. Maybe we should talk about counterculture now and what we can do about it, except I'm not sure that there's a whole lot we can do about it based on what's in this section.
Yep. Oh, man. So we can have it all. A new vision of the good life.
Yeah. All right. So the first chapter here is chapter 6. Yeah, like you mentioned, we can have it all. A new vision of the good life. And there wasn't a whole lot in these chapters for me. So it does mention that the call for work and not the worker to gain dignity is the first step toward closing the gap that causes burnout. That may be true, but what are you going to do with that? I mean, kind of tied back to the idea of emotional intelligence again is this idea of self-determination, the belief that you have the ability to set your own course. That's not just an American ideal. That is an emotional intelligence skill. In fact, Martin is in the chat. I think Martin, maybe you were the one who recommended for me back in the day that it's a purplish book. I'm blanking on it now. What was it? Susan Fowler, talking about how the motivation one, master your motivation, and how motivation really is tied back to a couple of factors. One of them being choice, and you don't actually have to take the choice. Like if you are feeling like you're not motivated, one of the things that you could do is recognize that, yeah, I could actually quit my job. And that ability to choose a different option gives you more motivation to show up even if you don't quit your job. Mm-hmm. So like, I don't know, there's that sort of thread throughout this whole book for me. It's like, well, you may be right in diagnosing the cause here, but I also think the place to start for anybody who would be reading this is, how can I apply this where I'm at right now? Mm-hmm. And he mentions at the very beginning. So there's like this inner turmoil throughout. Is like, is this a big deal? Is this not a big deal? He said he wasn't going to do this, but in the back of my mind, I guess, as we're working through this, I'm like, that is the right way to do this. I will say I got one action item from this chapter. It has nothing to do with the content of the chapter. And that is to read Walden. So I have ordered this book. We're going on vacation next week. I am bringing this one with me.
Let me know how that goes. There's no way I'm jumping on that one. Like, I have no interest in reading Walden. No way.
Yeah, that's fair. I understand the basic idea of the book, and I've heard that there's a lot of stuff in it that I'm not gonna like, but it's come up over and over and over and over and over again. So I just want to be able to say that I read it.
And I want you to tell me whether I should. So this is gonna work. This is gonna work out well. Okay, Mike. So I'm gonna put you on the spot here. And I didn't tell Mike I was gonna do this, so I feel bad a little bit.
Uh-oh.
Mike, where do people get dignity from? Like, where does a human get dignity from in your mind?
Well, I don't think it comes from the work that you do. I would agree with them there, that people have value and they have dignity regardless of their job. However, I also personally believe that you should do the best you can with what you have, and the whole stewardship idea. Mm-hmm. So regardless of your job, regardless of your situation, I feel like there should be some sort of motivation to I said it before, do the best you can with what you have, but really it's like multiply your talent, not money. Okay. Mm-hmm. But multiply the abilities, reach the full potential that you have inside of you, make the biggest dent in the universe that you can.
Okay, good. So I think this is probably the chapter where I don't want to say everything like came clear to me, but everything, like his perspective really started to shine through. And I started to understand like, oh, the position he's writing this book from. And it wasn't until now, like, which is crazy to me that it took me 6 chapters to really start getting it. The idea is like, I think he gets dignity from the work that he does, or he got dignity from the work that he did, right? Like, and it was 100%, not 100%. It was largely related to the work that he was doing. And so in dignity, the state or quality of being worthy of honor and respect, the state or quality worthy of being honor and respect. Okay. So now I think about like, I turn this internal, which he told me not to do, like, but at the same time, that's what I'm going to do, right? Like, so I'm going to turn this internal. I'm going to say, well, do I try to get dignity, honor, and respect from the work that I do? And the answer is, Yeah. Unfortunately, I do. Right? Like, so sorry for those of you who out there who don't hold the Christian worldview, but like I should get dignity of, I should get dignity being worthy of honor and respect from the fact that I'm made in the image of God, right? Like that's where I should get my honor and my dignity from. Now, because of that, I should go do good work. I should do work that enhances human flourishing. Like that's a result of the fact that I'm made in the image of God. Okay, so sorry, like I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but we can talk about it later if you want to, like reach out. But like I think that's the big issue in this book, right? Where he talks about the ideal being different than the reality. And the ideal is so much of people who are burned out or who say they're burned out, and whatever level of that spectrum is, are they looking for dignity from the actual work that they're doing? And then I go, am I looking for dignity, honor, and respect from the work that I'm doing? And you know the thing I don't like, Mike? The answer is yes. I probably am, right? That I am looking for that honor and respect from the work that I do every day. And that's a problem. Now, where I fail to follow his same logic and where I fail to like go as far as he's willing to go is like essentially it's almost as if, and I'm going to be too dramatic here, but it's like it's almost as if he like wants to burn the work ship down. Like he's like, well, like let's just torch this whole thing and let's just redo it. And I don't think that's the right approach either. Like there's somewhere in between there. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's yes, I shouldn't be looking for dignity in my work, or not all of my dignity in my work, or maybe not even most of my dignity in my work. But at the same time, like that doesn't mean CCU is trying to milk or eke every ounce of productivity they can out of me for the smallest amount of pay that they've ever paid anybody. Like I don't think those two, and I feel like that's what he does. Like he says we're looking for dignity in the wrong place, and this work environment is also trying to destroy you. And look at these two things. When they come together, they swirl into the world of burnout. And I just can't go that far. Like I can't take it that far.
Yep. I agree. I would argue that there's a very fine like nuance to this, where the fact that you are working, I feel like could bring you dignity. That's not necessarily bad. But if you're trying to get the dignity from the specific role,
yes,
that is where the problem lies.
Yes.
What was the guy's name? The Dirty Jobs guy, Mike Rowe,
Mike
talked
Rowe,
about passion, right? He's like, don't follow your passion, but always bring it with you. I think that's a great way to encapsulate it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Chapter 7, take it away.
All right. So chapter 77 is how Benedictines tame the demons of work. For some reason, Mike, and I don't know why, there was another book by Rob Dreher that I can't remember the name of it right now, but like there's another book about the Benedictines where he basically goes and lives with them. He does very similar to what Malesic does. And he goes and lives with them and he like understands them and studies them and he looks at the rules that they have, the Benedictine rules and all that stuff. I think this is fascinating. I love every time I read about the Benedictines. I love like just the thought of separating ourselves from the world with a purpose. Like we're not separating ourselves to like never interact with the world. We're separating ourselves like with a purpose. And then there's work built into the day, but like we don't prioritize the work. We prioritize prayer and liturgy and all these other things. And like, I don't know why, Mike, but like, I don't have anything really specific to say about anything in chapter 7, but I soak this stuff in. Like, I love it. Like, it's just fun to read about. I think it's so fascinating. I think it's so fun to read about. And it's like, I want to do it. I think that's part of the reason why is like, I want to take a year of my life and I want to just go like figure out either this lifestyle is going to be awesome and amazing and I'm going to learn a ton of stuff from it, or I'm going to hate every second of it. And I'm going to like want to get out of there as fast as I can. And it's almost like the idea of not knowing, what you don't know. And it's like, how would I do in that environment? Would I thrive in that environment or would I absolutely hate that environment? Like, what do you do today? Today, I take the weeds out of the garden, but that's not really my job today. My job today is to be in prayer and to do liturgy and to serve a community. And like, And oh, by the way, I pick weeds as the way I serve the community. It's like I don't know if I would love it or I'd hate it, but it's just really interesting. I can tell you, my wife would tell me I would hate it. Like she would tell me, Cory, you would hate every second of that. And I don't know if that's true or not, but like I just love reading about it. I love hearing about it. I think it's so cool.
I think it's interesting. And I also found it fascinating that not all Benedictines are so strict about deprioritizing work. And the example that they share is actually close to us. St. John's and St. Benedict's is in Minnesota. It's the next state over. So I'm familiar with those colleges and universities, and I obviously knew that they were connected to the Benedictine order, which I think is like a branch of the Catholic Church, if I remember right. So yeah, interesting, but also like, what is the point here? Interesting story. Cool that you went and you lived with these people in the middle of the desert for a while who were building web pages, right? But what do we do about this? I think it can all be encapsulated in a single sentence towards the end where it's a challenge. Keep work in perspective.
Yeah, it comes with this ideal. Like I think he's trying to reframe our minds with what the ideal of work is, and that we hold work up to be that like highest ideal, or sorry, many of us hold work up to be that highest ideal, and we shouldn't. Like we should just think of it as work, as something that we do in addition to all these other things. So it's like I don't know if he just wanted to go hang out with the Benedictines, or like if I agree with you. Like I don't think I see the really strong thread to the rest of his argument, but I like reading about him.
Yeah, me too. All right. Chapter 8, Varieties of Anti-Burnout Experience. I didn't really care for this chapter, particularly because there's an emphasis here on the negative effects of charismatic leaders, which I think in and of itself shows a cynical attitude. So leadership, I get that it can be used in a bad way to get people to overextend and do a bunch of stuff that maybe they shouldn't be doing. However, I feel like overall this is a good thing, and if you had to pick is this good or is bad, it's good, and it's not even close. In the emotional intelligence assessment, again, there's a scale. We call it sales orientation, but it's basically leadership, because leadership is selling someone on an idea that you can help them get where they want to go. And leadership, for context, the way I like to think about this is John Maxwell wrote a book, The 5 Levels of Leadership. And essentially, the higher you climb on that ladder, the less it is about you. So I think this just kind of locates him. Like, oh, these people, they're real charismatic. These quote unquote leaders, they're just trying to manipulate people to serve them. Like, that's not actually it. And it probably gets twisted and manifested in wrong ways in certain scenarios, but didn't really care for that. Having hobbies is a good way to get invested in other communities and keep us from becoming obsessed with our work. I like that. Yep. And the emphasis that you're worth so much more than your productivity, that I agree with. On the topic of the hobbies and the additional communities, I was going to put this as an action item, but I'm actually already doing this. Recently, I joined a Sunday night basketball league. So we have church on Sunday nights. I typically have just been like, I can't do anything because we got church at 6 p.m. And by the time we would get done, everything's going to be over. Well, I found this church group that plays at like 8 p.m. on Sunday nights. And the reason they play at 8 p.m. is because they have service in the morning, and then they have this gym, and they let a Congolese community use it as for their church services at 2 in the afternoon. And the person who organizes it told me sometimes they're done by 7. So they have these 5-hour services.
That's awesome.
Then they pick up the chairs, they sweep the gym, and then they play. So I was like, oh, I could actually make that work. And it's been a while since I've been part of a group that played like that. I've been in groups previously, but it's probably been 5-10 years since I had a group of guys that I played basketball with on the regular. So I'm excited about that.
All right, Mike. So again, there's big issues I have. And like what I struggle with when I'm evaluating these books and when I'm reading these books is I don't believe that if you took the time to write a book that there are any flyaway comments in that book, or that there should be any flyaway comments in that book. like this is a book. Like if you're writing a blog post, maybe there's a flyaway comment, right? Like, oh, okay, like I was passionate that morning and I wrote it in 15 minutes and then hit send, and okay, I was too aggressive on whatever it might be. When you're writing a book, it's not like you're writing it in a day. You're taking the time, and especially, I don't remember who the publisher is on this one. Do you remember who the publisher is on this one? Like, is it a big house?
I don't, but I can look it up.
University of California Press, right? Like, so
okay.
not a small publisher. Like, that's my point, is it's not a small publisher. Okay. He makes a statement in here. He's quoting somebody else, and I didn't write down who he's quoting, but the right not to work is the right not to have your value determined by your productivity as a worker, by your employability, or your salary. Now, here's the challenge I have.
So I like that, but the word value, we got to unpack.
Okay. I agree that I should not look at Mike, the creator, and should not make a value judgment of Mike, the creator, as a human based on the fact that he's a creator, based on whatever he makes as a salary, based on whether he would be employable anywhere else. I agree completely with that. But like the idea of the right not to work brings so much other baggage and other common connotation into this. Like, I have a right not to work. Well, okay. But then that means you also have a right not to be able to afford food and not to be able to afford a house. Like,
yeah.
And I'm sorry that that's the way our society is, but like, that's how it is. We are not devaluing you as a human, but like I talk to the boys all the time, and I'm sure you talk to your kids about this. Consequences, or actions have consequences. So therefore, like, I'm not saying that I should have any right to value you based on what your employment status is or any of that other stuff. But that is separate from consequences for those decisions and those actions. And like what I fear is I fear like you're going to read this chapter and you're going to think, yeah, like we should all have the right not to work. And it's like, well, okay, then you also are giving yourself the right for other things that you probably don't want in your life. And like that, and that's, I've had this disconnection with multiple different things that he's done and multiple different ways he's framed arguments. That's really, really like lessened the book for me, if that makes sense.
So let me unpack that a little bit, because I generally agree with everything that you said. I think there is some nuance there to that, though. Like, yes, you have the right not to work, and there are certain things you're not going to have because you're not working. I think the argument could be made, though, that there are certain things that you should get regardless of whether you are working or not. The probably low-level one there is like the universal healthcare example. And I'm not 100% for, everybody should be able to just walk into whatever doctor at any given point, not have to pay anything. Maybe there's a scenario where that works. I haven't studied that out far enough. But I can tell you, because I have been diagnosed with epilepsy, that if I were to try and get some sort of health insurance now, prior to that diagnosis, I have this pre-existing condition and I can't get it. Yep. And that just feels a little bit icky.
I agree.
I have no issues. I have it under control. But the fact that I cannot get it anymore, like that should be dealt with. So there's probably some things there that you could argue, yes, you should be able to get this, and the other thing. But I don't think you should be able to have a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house on a half-acre lot with a white picket fence and a food budget and all these different things. Like, yes, we should be taking care of the people who are in need. But I don't think, to your point, that just because you showed up and you exist, that you get this big list of benefits.
Yeah. Yeah. And my thing is, I'm not even saying that he is saying that. What I'm saying is it's too easy for it to be misconstrued as, and like,
that is the vibe. That is the vibe, though. Yeah.
Like I'm alive, so therefore, blah, 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 blah. When really it's you should not be valuing me as a human based on the fact that I'm a professor, or you shouldn't be valuing you as a human based on the fact that you're a creator,
100%.
Or that I make X amount of dollars and you make X amount of dollars, or Y amount of dollars, or whatever it is, right? Like, I agree with that part completely. I just think it's too easy to muddy that water and like lose the thread of the argument. And maybe that's what it is like, I don't see a clear argument thread throughout this book. And I'm not a big fan when that happens. I don't like books when they don't have a good, clear thread.
All right. Well, let's get to that in just a minute here. We do have one more part, which is the conclusion. Hopefully we can do this one quick.
We can do it quick.
This conclusion is pretty short. And this is where he talks a little bit about how the pandemic disrupted things. Mm-hmm. He asked the question on social media, which this was interesting. Is anybody enjoying the pandemic? To this day, if you were to ask some of our older kids specifically, because they were old enough, I think, to understand what was going on. They would say that when everything got shut down, that was the best time of their life. But specifically day one, I remember having a conversation saying, okay, everything's going to look different now. We're going to be spending a lot of time together. This can either be awesome or this can really suck. It's kind of up to us. And it was enjoyable for us, to be honest. Like it was a forced reset. You had to reconsider all of the things that you had made commitments to. And for us, we used that as an opportunity to wipe the slate clean and, okay, we're going to do the best version of this, the best version of that. And there were times where we would go up to Door County and be up there for 2 months. We couldn't do that normally, but because we didn't have to be specific places, we couldn't meet together physically, we would go to the grocery store or come back home to get supplies and then go back up there. And it was great. He also mentions the robot revolution, which is sort of a nod to AI and it taking over people's jobs. That is a whole nother 20-minute conversation that we don't have time to get into.
Agreed.
But there's one specific line at the very end, which I think is brilliant. Let the machines burn out. We have better things to do.
Yep.
Chef's kiss.
Yes. It was a really good line. This is one of the first books that I remember, and I'm sure somebody else has done it, where the COVID conversation stood out so starkly that like we got to like the conclusion, it was all about COVID. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, what's this going to read like in 30 years? What's this going to read? And I was like, oh, this is very interesting. So that was an interesting point of the conclusion to me, but I agree with you completely. We'll end it here. Let the machines burn out. We have better things to do. Couldn't agree more. If you told me that machines were ethically running the world and we all had the free time to do exactly what we wanted to do, I'm there, man. I'm in for that.
Nice. All right. Action items. I had a couple that I jotted down in my mind map file. The first one was to take the burnout inventory, but I texted you and said, hey, you want to take this, talk about it. So that one is actually done already. The second one was to read Walden. And so that'll be my gap book as well, probably. And then you added one here where the app that I made, I'm calling it Feed Deck. That has a test flight. Again, more details on that in the pro show. But do you have any action items from this?
So I don't have any action items from this book, and I'm okay with that. Like, I feel good about that. But my action item is take Mike's quiz. Can I still take your quiz?
Sure. Yeah, you can take it.
And you need to
I'll
leave
put
this
the
in here
link
so I
in
don't
the
forget.
show notes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I added it to my
fine.
the problem was I didn't add it to my list before. So I'm going to take your quiz. I'm going to take your PKM quiz. So.
All right.
Which has nothing to do with this.
Okay. Style and rating. The style of this book, I think I actually like. I like the personal story. He had some very cool experiences hanging out with some Benedictines.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like those experiences in the story that he tells are very opinionated and not maybe not very generalizable. The question I was kind of asking myself as I went through this whole book was, how does this apply to me? And sometimes it was easy to make the connections. A lot of times it wasn't. And there were quite a few times where, as I talked about, it's like, oh, well, he's a little bit jaded by his experience here. And I'm not sure that has to be the case. So yeah, it's interesting. Who should read this book? Like, on the one hand, I love that he's bringing attention to this topic of burnout. I think he does a pretty good job in the first section for the first 4 chapters anyways, talking about the different aspects of this. There isn't like a real concrete, this is what you do about it, but that's okay. I think you really need to just kind of think about this, and it's probably going to take some time before people would make the drastic changes, which is really going to contribute to reduce burnout in their lives. But as a manifesto for a culture, I kind of don't think this works. Maybe it would be interesting to find out numbers about this. And I also don't know if he wrote any other books. Like, is this, really his thing that he's going to champion? Or is this just, I wrote this book and now he's on to the next book? I don't know. But as a, fight against the societal issue of burnout and we need to burn it all down and rethink how we approach work, I think I think it's not super effective from that perspective. I'm gonna rate this 2 stars. I think I'm glad that I read it. I do want to read Christina Maslec's book now. And honestly, an academic book about burnout may be too boring for me to get through. So it's an entertaining read and an interesting read. But I found myself disagreeing with a good chunk of it. And that's not necessarily bad if it gets you to do something about it, but there's really nothing to do about it other than really take the inventory, figure out where you're at, which he tells you this is not the purpose of the book, and then do something with the information that you glean from that. So I just don't think it's a great fit for Bookworm.
Yeah.
And I'll rate it at 2 stars.
My biggest knock on this one is that thread. Like I didn't feel like we stayed connected to that thread. We took some divergence here and there, and then did we get back to it, or did we clearly get back to it? So I think that's my biggest style issue with it. I actually liked his writing. I thought it was good. I thought the personal story was good. It drove a lot of what we were thinking about as we go through this. Where I'm conflicted on thinking about this, Mike, is like, I feel like you and I have had a really good discussion about this book. And when I say discussion, I don't mean like we agreed with everything, so therefore we're like, yeah, sis boom ba, or like we completely like thrashed everything. Like it was a good back and forth. Like it was a good like thought experiment to read this book and say like, what do I think about this? Like, how do I engage with this idea? Like, do I like it? Do I not like it? Do I agree with it? Do I not agree with it? I know that wasn't his intention. His intention wasn't for me individually to do that. His intention was more to, I think, drive culture change. Like and drive like work culture change and like the way we think about work and the way we approach work. And I don't think that is as clear or as effective as he wanted it to be, as the author wanted it to be. So like from you and I talking about this, awesome. Like I think it's a really, really good book. From the goal of what he was trying to do, I don't know. So like that's where I'm torn. I'm torn on this.
Yeah.
Easy read. I didn't think it was confusing. All that stuff. It lacked a thread. So essentially what I'm trying to figure out is I'm between a 2 and a 3. Like I personally engaged with it too much, I feel like, for it to be a 2 for me. Like, you know, I mean, I just gave a book a 1, right? Like I just gave a book a 1. So folks don't think I'm afraid to give books low ratings. But like I think I engaged with it too much to give it a 2. But at the same time, I don't know if it rises to the level of the 3 in my one. So I'm going to give it a 2.5. I'm going to give something I don't do. I'm going to give it a 2.5 because I can't pick between the two. Do I think everybody should read this? No. Do I think that you should skim it? Maybe. Listen to us talk about it and see if there are parts of it that you think are more interesting, and then just read the parts that are more interesting to you. That's what I think you should do. I don't think everybody should pick this one up and read it. I don't think it's necessary.
All right. Well, let's put The End of Burnout on the shelf. What's next, Cory?
So next we are reading The Coaching Habit, Say Less, Ask More, and Change the Way You Lead by Michael Bungay Stanier. And basically it's this idea of, you know, he's got experience in these training environments with managers, and like, how do you kind of help people get more out of what they do? I like the idea of, he's got these questions: the kickstart question, the awe question, the lazy question, the strategic question. So this book's a little bit older. It's from 2016. But I think it's going to be interesting to think about leadership and thinking about like how we do what I assume is going to be leadership through coaching, which this is very, very on the nose for me. I do this a lot. I help people think about leadership as I coach them and mentor them in my job. So if you're reading with us, the next book will be The Coaching Habit by Michael Bungay Stanier. And after that, what are we doing, Mike?
The Science of Storytelling by Will Storr. This one was recommended to me recently, and I like the idea of storytelling. There's a lot of good storytelling in the book we just finished, and I feel like this is one of those universal skills that I would like to get better at. So let's read The Science of Storytelling. Got any Gap books?
I have a bunch of Gap books that I'm working through right now. The one I'm doing right now is called Gentle and Lowly by Dane Ortland. So that's the one I'll state for here. But yes, there's this one. And then I think there's probably going to be 2 more that get read in addition to the Bookworm book between now and our next recording. So Gentle and Lowly by Dane Ortland.
Well, I am, as I mentioned, reading Walden by Henry David Thoreau. Going on vacation. That one should arrive today. So I'll report back.
Nice.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you want to support the show, consider becoming a Bookworm Pro member. You can do so by going to bookworm.fm/pro. And for $7 a month, you get a longer ad-free show where we have an extra segment. Today, we talked about the app that I built. You also get a bootleg recording, which is released right after we get done here. So typically, that's about 2 weeks before the actual episodes go out. There's a 4K Bookworm wallpaper. There's access to a reading masterclass workshop that I did. And again, all of that is $7 a month, helps us keep the lights on. So thank you to everyone who is a pro member. If you want to become a pro member yourself, go to bookworm.fm/pro.
If you're reading along with us, pick up The Coaching Habit, and we'll talk to you next time.